definitely undermines some people's belief in God, not my own. I mean, I believe in a personal God. But, you know, if you look just at one of the monotheistic religions, namely Christianity, Jesus himself is quoted in the Gospels as stating that we live in an inhabited universe. When he said, "My Father's house is vast, and there are many mansions in it," Jesus had to be talking either about different realms of existence that we access spiritually over multiple lifetimes, because we know in his statement about Elijah that Jesus endorsed the notion of reincarnation, and that was de-emphasized in Scripture as a result of the when Christianity became the state religion under Emperor Constantine. So we know Jesus was an adherent to the doctrine of reincarnation. We also know he makes this very interesting statement. I think it's almost the fundamental statement in exopolitics, when he said, if he existed, or alternatively, if the character in the novel of the New Testament makes this statement, he says, "My Father's house is vast, and there are many mansions in it." I think he only could have meant that there are different realms of existence that God has ordained or created for spirits to move through, or that God's house, which is the universe itself, has many planets in it. But certainly that's a metaphor, a parable that an ordinary person can understand, that we don't just live in this one inhabited planet. And then there's also, finally, there's the issue of catastrophobia that I mentioned that Barbara Hand Clow has written about, that, you know, when our civilization was utterly devastated by the solar system catastrophe of 9500 BC, our ancestors had to rebuild civilization by literally pounding stones together. They went from being an advanced civilization that had its headquarters in Cairo and had people on Mars, and to literally being in a Stone Age existence where they were making flint objects to kill game with and try to survive. So we see evidence both of that advanced civilization and the rebuilding effort since 11,500 years ago. And that's sort of the great archaeological mystery that we've been trying to find answers to for the last 150 years. But now we pieced it together, and we know that we live with a legacy of fear of Mars, because Mars was involved in this catastrophe that so sundered the civilization that our ancestors had built. So those are the many factors that I think can help us understand why, when I published my paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, I was subjected to very little intelligent criticism and a lot of very unintelligent criticism. But, you know, Jessica, I've been speaking at considerable length here. I know you have some questions, so how about if you fire away? I'd like to field some of your questions.
Okay. Have you heard of Borsica, the Mars child?
I'm familiar with Borsica, and that he's from Russia, and that he was interviewed by Project Camelot. But tell me more about him. I haven't watched that interview yet.
He basically is just a boy that remembered living on Mars, and he just started telling his family one day all about life on Mars and what it was like. And as he's been getting older, he's been forgetting more of it. But he's like, more and more babies seem to be able to remember where they're from, what planet they're from, and what it was like.
Right. In fact, that is relevant to my experience, because as a human child in this life, before age 7, I did remember a number of my past lives. When I would be dreaming, I also remembered one life on Mars, and I was accessing those dreams, those lucid dreams, as I've been writing my papers. So, as I mentioned to one individual who wrote to our organization, the Mars Anomaly Research Society, or MARS, I do believe that some of us have lived in the civilizations on other planets in our solar system. In my case, I remember walking through some of the underground cave-like chambers or rooms that are underneath the Martian surface. And then, by the way, 4 days after I published my paper last year, I got a call from a woman who was a psychologist for DARPA, who had interacted with me when I was a child on Project Pegasus. And she went on to a very extensive career with the CIA. And she talked with me about my paper. This was like a post-hoc after the paper came out, and knew I was going to be getting a lot of notoriety as a result of my Mars discoveries, and just wanted to see how I was doing, I assumed for the CIA. And she just volunteered the fact that there are about 1 million humanoids underneath underground civilization at Mars, and they're of several different species. So she was kind of edifying me that my data in my paper was correct. But I have had kind of a spiritual experience with the data, in the sense that when I've been writing my papers, I've been remembering different things I did on Mars, and what a weird kind of recondite civilization it is, and some of the different life forms that I encountered in that life. For example, some of the creatures on Mars are sort of like bipedal turtles or teenage mutant ninja turtle types, where you have somebody who talks like a human, but they have like a face like a turtle or a reptile. So I was having flashbacks to a life on Mars where I was interacting with a more diverse menagerie of intelligent creatures than you do on planet Earth.
Because time is so non-linear, it's like a DVD. You know, you can jump to the middle, the near the end, and the beginning, and so forth, back and forth in a split second. So you can get that memory and access it. I began
to conceive of what I was doing, which was laying the foundation for harmonious diplomatic and cultural relations between the civilization on Earth and the one that we now know is on Mars. In other words, I felt at the level of the oversoul, if you will, a sense that I was engaged in a universal government function that was important, because I was laying a foundation for our dealings with the Martian civilization to be based on knowledge and on the prospect of harmonious collaboration with the Martian civilization, rather than on ignorance and fear and thoughts of violence and warfare. So I think that past life on Mars and my current work may be linked at the level of my soul, in the sense that because I had the past life memories, I knew that it was a good thing that the data be positioned in a way that leaves open the prospect that the people of Earth and the people of Mars can creatively and harmoniously and peacefully collaborate with each other. And I know we were doing that with one of the Mars species back in 1970 when I met the three Martian aviators or astronauts, and they seem like very nice chaps. And so I think that past life on Mars may be informing this part of my mission in this life.
I think so as well. Okay. Wow, where to start? I have so many questions.
Fire away, Jessica.
Okay. When you were talking about how people knew about you in your future, that they knew what kind of work you'd be doing and so forth, you mentioned about how even Obama knew that he was going to be president, and that reminds me of that article I came across with the Lincoln and Kennedy coincidence, and even Marilyn Monroe involved. And they were doing...
I'm not familiar with what you're describing.
We talked about this article once before, the Lincoln-Kennedy, how similar that they both look alike at the timing and the synchronicities with all the presidents.
Yeah, the famous coincidences.
Yes.
Regarding their lives and deaths and so forth.
Yes. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that? Because it's interesting, because it started like with Kennedy time, right? Well, actually, sorry, before Abraham Lincoln.
Well, what do you mean? Just what are my thoughts on that?
Well, they knew that he was also going to be president as well, so it seemed like if they weren't advanced even in that time and had that information and knowledge, then was it time travel? Was it informed? Were they informed that way?
I think that the Kennedy-Lincoln coincidences are a function of the fact that President Lincoln and President Kennedy were great spirits who chose to incarnate as presidents of the United States, who were linked in a common identity as spirits, that they were on the same team, if you will. And so the coincidences or synchronicities are a function of their spiritual kindredship. I don't believe that the coincidences surrounding their lives and their assassinations are linked to quantum access, but I do believe they may be hallmarks of the way in which